Hey, we are here again with another Cockpit Conversation. Jason and Dana enjoying a conversation. Two friends, biological brothers, and we're just having one of those kind of conversations that you would have if you were sitting in the cockpit of the airplane with me. I am Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, nearly 30 years of military service, flying airplanes around the world, a little bit of mobility operations, a little bit of special operations, and and now I'm a keynote speaker, executive coach, and I'm also an airline pilot. Dana, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
I am Dana Harris, the brother of Jason Harris. My day job is I'm a high school math teacher of now 21 years, man. And now I get to do one of the coolest things ever, and that's be your on site logistics manager for all your keynotes. Very good times and grateful to be here, man.
No, that's awesome, man. So you get a inside view of my world, and you get to have the conversation with me that other people wish that they had. And so, what's on your heart and mind this morning, man?
Um, you talk there's so the cool thing about seeing you from the stage is I get to see the talking points that you repeat on the regular from the stage, as well as just the really cool conversations that we have that are just like cockpit conversations, if I could imagine it. And one of the things I want to talk about is you have this idea of burning the ships, and a lot of people talk about it, but let's talk about your take on burning the ships, man. Especially with the kickoff of the new year, people have different things that they want to do in their business and their career, as a leader and things like that. So let's get into that conversation.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I don't believe in the idea of burning the ships. Now, I'm fully aware of what that means, the idea of burning the ships. But let me add a little bit of context to it. Like the idea of burning the ships basically says, hey, I can do this, I could do that. For me, for example, I'm a professional keynote speaker. I'm also an airline pilot. And some people would say, hey, man, your business is the keynote speaking and product development, digital products, your book that's coming out, all of this stuff. And so they would say, you should consider burning the ships, meaning just let that airline job go, burn those ships, and go all in on the speaking business. And that's how you win. Well, for some people that works. For some people, they feel like they need a 100% solid burn the ship solution to say I have no life boat, I have no life vest. It's just do or die, and so they believe that that's going to help them to succeed. They believe that that's going to help them to win is if they take away all of their backup options. Now, I will agree that at some point and some people that is actually true. In some cases, for some people, it makes sense that you need to remove the other options because you're going to always fall back on the option. But for me, I personally don't believe in burning the ships. I believe in making certain that I've got a second plan, a secondary plan, a tertiary plan, that I've got backups to the backups just in case, because that's how I've been conditioned and that's how I've been trained so that I have options. And so that's kind of my initial going in viewpoint when it comes to the idea of burning the ships.
So when you talk about that, right? It makes me kind of think about when I first heard the term, and I don't know the full facts, but I think it was something associated with a war historically, and they used that as an idea to say we're coming back with this victory, right? So when you talk about going into business or going into leadership, whatever it may be, if we use your case, right? Why is it that you say, "Hey, I'm going to continue working this job," and then is there a certain point that you say, okay, when my business meets this amount of funding or we get this amount of revenue, do you have a plan in your mind for that point?
Absolutely. You know, there's always a plan in my mind for what's to come next. And then, you know, for me, I have my plans based on what it is that I'm setting out to do. Now, if we use my example is a very unique and different environment. It's a very unique and
Very true.
different setup. And the reason why it's a different setup is because I'm an airline pilot. And as an airline pilot, I can choose to fly as much or as little as I want, and I can still run my business. There was a dude who was on, there was one of the shows on the Discovery Channel, Deadliest Catch. And that dude was an airline pilot for one of the major airlines. And then he was also on the show as a fisherman, right? So we have a unique environment versus the person who works a normal 9 to 5, normal office or normal type of hourly job, if you would, where you have to be in an office every single day of the week, so on and so forth. When you're in that kind of environment, the idea of burning the ships is a little bit different. You get to that point where you say, I have exhausted all of my sick leave, I've exhausted all of my vacation time, and I realize that I'm now at a point where I have to make a decision. And that decision will determine if I'm going to succeed and or fail. That decision will determine if I'm going to actually be able to do this business. So then for me specifically, I have metrics, I have parameters that say, okay, in order for me to walk away from this ship, this option over here, in order for me to burn that ship, then I need to have this other ship have this amount of resources within it. Or this current ship has to have already provided X amount of resources for me in order for me to make that determination that I can now burn that ship and I don't need it any longer. And so I would say if you're looking at that, then you need to set in motion or put on paper what those parameters are. Hey, what are those trigger points to say, okay, I'm one step closer to getting to where I want to be? What is that, like, what is that data point, that trigger point? What is that monetary number? What is that accomplishment in my business? What is that accomplishment in paying off my debt? All of those factors that will determine if you're actually ready to burn the ship. Now, I've seen people win where they've been like, you know what, dude, I'm all in on this idea. I'm all in on this business. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pour some gas on these ships and I'm gonna light them on fire, and it's sink or swim, and they win. And I've seen that because it's a grind mindset. But then I've also seen people that they've drowned when they've done that too.
What role can mentorship and coaching help someone? So let's say someone like me, because I love the fact that you pointed out that people's careers are different. I have to show up at my job every day. I'm fortunate to be able to take the time off and travel with you when we do client events. But what role does mentorship and coaching play in helping someone like myself to make sure that I'm not in delusion? If I say I want to go start a business, um, I don't know, something that I haven't done or something that I've been interested in, but I haven't really even been consistent. How important is that in someone like me or the average person out here who wants to go into business and they want to leave the 9 to 5?
Man, it's extremely important, right? Seek wise counsel. If you are not seeking wise counsel, then you are doing yourself a disservice. No matter how smart you are, there is someone who is smarter than you. And the idea of a coach, I want you to think about Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, the greats. Like literally, you start looking at those guys, and you go, wait a minute. They had the team coach, but then they had a strength and conditioning coach, and then they had multiple coaches to help them. LeBron, right? LeBron spends like $1 million or more a year on making sure his vessel is good to go. And then he attends different events to help him for the business side of what he's doing, what he's building business-wise. So he's seeking wise counsel. The dude has millions of dollars. The dude is a legend already, right? Steph Curry, same thing. So Michael Jordan, same thing. If you go and talk to them about how they became successful in their businesses, they will tell you that they had wise counsel, they had mentors, they had coaches, they had people that helped them as far as on the court, and they had people to help them as far as the business. So it is absolutely essential that you seek wise counsel, you get the right coaching, and that you know who those people in your space are or around you that can help you to do what you're trying to do. Because if you attempt to go it alone, You might make it, you might not, but the chances of your success are greatly diminished if you are not doing that with the right people surrounding you, and that includes the wise counsel, the mentors, and the coaches.
Okay. So then now, what about this ideology of thinking outside the box? Because I know you're not a fan of that one as well. So people are taught to, oh, you have to think outside the box if you're trying to leave your 9 to 5, or you have to think outside the box to create a product that no one has created already. There's also nothing new under the sun. We also have AI and different tools that people can use now. So many of the products and services that people have used to create a business in the past, they may be struggling. So how can we think about those kind of things and then speak on the idea of thinking outside the box?
Well, first and foremost, the idea of thinking outside the box, let me be very clear. I think that while it might work for most, I think that many times thinking outside the box is actually not the best idea. To say it a little bit more bluntly, a lot of times I think it's the dumbest idea. And here's why I think it's the dumbest idea, because the idea of thinking outside the box says, if I have something that I like into a box, and I say, well, think outside of this box. What happens is you latch on and you hold on to the corner of this box. And so because of that, you're tethered to the idea of what this box means. You're tethered to the idea of the box. And while you're outside of that box, you're still holding on to the concepts and the ideas that represent that box, that represents that fundamental principle or fundamental idea. So while you might be thinking outside the box, you're still tied and tethered to the box that doesn't allow you to actually create, it doesn't allow you to actually create what you want to create, which is something that is innovative, which is something that is creative. And so because of that, I then encourage people, instead of thinking outside the box, I encourage people to think about blowing up the box.
Ooh. As you were saying that, I could imagine like swimming. And I remember as a young kid learning how to swim, going underwater. Some kids don't mind opening their eyes and the burn afterwards. But other people, that kid that's still holding their nose and they still have their eyes closed. If I'm in the water, I still have an idea of where the side of the pool is. So even with my nose plugged like this, my eyes closed, and I'm paddling with that one hand, I still know if I keep going, I'm gonna eventually touch that wall. And it's like that wall is like the box. Somewhere in our mind, in our subconscious mind, that box is still there. I love the fact that you mentioned innovation and being creative, because those types of things are important when you're building something, right? Where would a person, if a person is wanting to go into business, whether they want to get into keynote speaking, whatever kind of business they want to start, what are some things that you can give the people to start with as far as ideas, um, measurements, parameters, and things for themselves so that they know how to be reasonable with their endeavors, yet at the same time, they're working towards building something in the long term?
Well, I don't know if I can really offer much to them, to be quite honest. And the reason I say that is because I don't know what business they're getting into. If I know
Hmm.
what business you're getting into, I might be able to offer you some perspective. If I know what your talents are, I might be able to offer you perspective. But I'm going to come back to that in a second, and let me go back to the blowing up the box thing, because I didn't add additional context to it. When I say blow up the box, I mean start fresh. If you start with a fresh, clean
Mm.
slate, once you blow up the box and you're no longer tethered to that box, you're no longer tethered to that idea of how you've always existed and how we've always done it, then that allows you to be innovative, creative, and to actually come up with different ideas that are not attached to the same premise and same concept. So that's the blowing up the box. Now, break. Coming back to what you're asking about advice for people who are looking to start a business or are looking to go into a space. So I would say you need to figure out what your talents are, what you're good at. Just like that's a priority. Once you understand what you're good at, what your talents are, then you begin to understand what's possible and what you're capable of doing. And then I would encourage people to do a full on assessment. Like I love cooking and I love baking, and some people say chase your passion. Just because I love cooking and baking don't mean I'm gonna open up a cupcake shop. Doesn't mean I'm gonna open up a cake
Right.
shop. Doesn't mean I'm gonna open up a restaurant. That's a lot of work. I'm not about to do that,
Hmm.
right? For many different reasons. And so I would say start with a healthy assessment of who you are, a healthy assessment of what your talents are, a healthy assessment of what your level of investment is by way of financial investment and time investment, and then make certain that you understand what's required in that space. Go and talk to people who've actually done it. Because what you find is a lot of times people that don't actually know a business are giving you bad advice. Man, you a good
Yes.
man. You can cook really good, man. You can speak really good, man. You should be a professional speaker, man. You should open up a cupcake shop. You should open up a restaurant. Well, have you ever actually owned a restaurant? Have you ever been a keynote speaker? Do you know what it means to own that kind of business? Nah, but I think you could do it. Well, who are you to give me that advice if you don't even know what it takes to do that? So don't listen to the people who are like, don't listen to people who don't know. So, and then if you decide that you're interested, then take the time to go and find the people who actually know that space, who know that
Mm.
business. Spend time researching that industry, researching that business, so that you can determine, is this worth pursuing? You know, like if we go back to the idea of burning the ships, there are people who have jumped off of their ship, jumped off their boat into the water, torched their boat for an idea that they had no idea about. And they wonder why they failed. They wonder why they struggled because they didn't seek wise counsel. They didn't get coaching. They didn't get mentoring. They didn't get guidance. They didn't understand the industry. They just listened to somebody who told them, you could go and do that. You can go and make millions of dollars by doing XYZ. And they gave up that good job. Sometimes it's best that you stick to that good government job. Sometimes it's best that you stick to that W 2 world. Ain't nothing wrong with a W 2 job. Let me be real clear.
Absolutely.
Ain't nothing wrong, but we're allowing all these other people around us to convince us that we should let that go and that we should chase all these opportunities. Hey man, it ain't as easy as people make it out to be. There's a lot of energy and work, and you need to put in the work before you step out there. Put in the work before you step out there and burn those boats. That's what I would encourage people to do if they're thinking about getting involved in business and jumping into another endeavor.
Don't let that social media world fool you. And I'm going to go back for a second because, your keynote is about trust and leadership, right? And building high performance teams, right? But you mentioned something about this is how we've always done it and things like that. So even with this idea of blowing up the box, burning the ships, right? The reason that phrase of this is how we've always done it sticks out to me is because this content that we're talking about right now, as a leader, there's someone who may be even in the corporate world, they're working a 9 to 5, and they may be a mid-level leader wherever they are on the totem pole, essentially. If they want to start something different that hasn't been done and they want to shift the culture, what things can they start by doing to affect the culture? Because I can't just go to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and say, hey, we need to do this, we need to change this, and I have no metrics to prove it.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to change the culture of an organization, I think it starts with understanding the organization. So
Mm.
understand what the current culture is, understand who is driving the culture, understand what is driving the culture. So you got to understand what the culture is, who's driving the culture, and what's driving the culture. Then you can have an awareness of, is there even a potential for me to impact the culture to help it change? And then you have to understand that at times, depending on the size of the organization and the drivers of the culture, that will determine how much energy and time it's going to take to change that culture. And it's like a
Mm,
massive battleship. You don't just turn a battleship, do a 180-degree turn in 90 seconds. It takes time, like a lot of time. I don't know what it takes, the actual timing it takes for a aircraft carrier type of battleship to do a 180-degree turn, but I guarantee you it is not a quick endeavor. And so I think the
absolutely.
same thing goes with culture. What is it going to take to turn that culture around? And more importantly, not even to turn it around in terms of a 180-degree concept, but what does it take to even get that culture to start moving in a direction that's different than where it's at right now? But
Hmm.
that takes time. You have to assess it. If you're not doing an assessment, then you won't know. And then from there, then you have to figure out, how do you impact the people that impact the culture? And then from there, be intentional about every action along the way. Intentional about the conversations, intentional about the activities, intentional about where you're trying to move the culture. And then part of that is also understanding the individuals, because culture is nothing more than what the individuals do, what they perceive, and how they receive, and also how they transmit the information back and forth to each other. And so
Hmm.
if you don't have the ability to impact individuals, then you don't have the ability to impact the culture, right? So you can see it's a whole lot. It's not hard, but it's also not easy um, to make happen, right? So it's like
Right.
that battleship again. Cool. We know we want to turn. Okay, great. How far? How much distance does it take us to turn? Cool. Do we have that much space in front of us? Okay, great. All right. Now, do we have that much time? Do we have to slow things down? And then, how long is that turn going to take? What's the normal turn radius? Notice there's all these calculations.
Hmm.
Well, we have specifics in a battleship because we know how a battleship works. We don't necessarily have specifics in an organization, but we can get as much of the specifics as possible when we do all the research ahead of time. And that will help us to at least make some very, very educated guesses and assumptions based on assessments with how we manage that culture change.
It starts with changing as an individual.
Yes.
You know, it if I as a leader want to change the culture, let's just my department, whatever it may be, I have to start locally. Like you say, charity starts at home, right? And so as I begin to change, and whatever work I'm doing, whatever role I play in my organization, then as I have to be consistent with it first, right?
Mm.
So something as simple as showing up on time. You know, I'm one of those people that these 3 5 minutes I'm late every day, it won't make a difference. But we never know. You mentioned the people, knowing the people that affect the culture, right? And what the current culture is. I never know. You could be that person that's looking through their window and see me coming in the door 3 to 5 minutes every day. And then I come to present you with, hey, Jason, I want to change this. And then oftentimes people will take offense to it. Well, Dana, that's a great idea. And I think we can put that into play. However, I'm noticing that you want me to announce to the company that everybody needs to be on time. However, I see 3 days a week you're late 5 minutes. I see 3 days a week you're coming through the doors when the bell rings. So it's doing that self-assessment to realize what things can you change within yourself first? What things can I change within my home first? What can I do to be a better individual? Oftentimes people try to jump out there and be a leader without leading themselves first.
Yeah,
And it's important for people to think about those things in regards to that.
I agree, man. I agree. I think as we kind of wrap things up, there's a lot there, and I think it definitely starts with leading yourself, right? And so whether we're talking about burning the ships, whether we're talking about blowing up the box, whether we're talking about going into business, it's about self leadership, changing the culture. It all comes down to self leadership. How are you leading yourself, and how are you showing up every day? And that goes back to the concept that I always talk about, which is earning your title of leader every single day. That's earning the title of leader in your workplace, earning the title of leader in your home, and even with yourself. Like, how do you view yourself based on the commitments that you're making every single day? And so I would say, I would encourage people to do a self assessment, do a self examination, and determine what's the example you're putting out. Are you showing people an example that says, I'm actually here to make the culture better? And that I'm here to make those around me better. If you're looking at going into business on your own, what are you doing to make certain that you've done the research ahead of time to give yourself every opportunity and advantage to succeed? And then if you're looking at changing things up and you're looking at innovation and ideas, what are you doing to give yourself a fresh slate so that you could do something great and not be tethered to this age old ideas and the same things, and doing the things because we've always done it. And then, with that, again, it starts with self. What are we doing for ourselves? So, again, appreciate you jumping in the conversation today, man. Great conversation. Lots that we covered today. Kind of hit a bunch of topics, but hopefully we've given people something for them to chew on, something for them to think about. If you guys want to reach out to us, all the contact information is down in the description. Feel free to reach out anytime. If you got questions that you want us to answer, hit us up. Let us know. We'd love to answer those questions. Any parting thoughts, Dana?
My only parting thought is just start with self, start within, do a true self assessment, and then reach out to wise counsel to get them to look over you and your ideas and assess it as well, and be willing to accept the feedback.
Awesome. Great conversation today, man. Blue skies, fair winds, and all the best. We'll see y'all next time.